Welcome to my channel, fellow Rotorheads. As we round the bend here on Dallas Cowboy Stadium, we're headed to the Helisim training facility in Grand Prairie, Texas. No affiliation to Captain Helisim, of course. That is the training and certification facility with a Class D simulator. It is a treat and a privilege to be able to try that out today. The purpose of the facility is, of course, for training and for certification on a variety of Airbus helicopters. They do what's called type rating. So you come in with a pilot's license. Maybe you have something on the R-22 or something like that, and you want to be certified to be able to fly something from Airbus. An AS-350, an H-135, H-145. These guys do that for you. Now, as I'm going down the rabbit hole of simulation, I have entertained the nagging question of just how realistic can this get? My previous answer to that was about 60 to 70%. That was comparing my simulator to my first and only intro flight on a Robinson R-22. I attributed the gap between that 60 to 70% to the real thing to 4 factors. The first item was a lack of a collective control. I was using the paddle on my joystick. The second item was the lack of motion. I was curious how much motion contributes to realism in helicopter simulation. The third is the visceral feel of the sensory overload, the wind, the vibration, the gyroscopic action. And the last item, humorously enough, was a sense of fear. The fear of property damage, injury, or death. Down this rabbit hole of simulation, there is a pocket of consumer-grade motion rigs. And here in my own backyard, we have a Class D, top-grade, professional-level, full-motion rig for helicopters. So I felt compelled to investigate and find out just how close can we get. We know 100% realism is not achievable on a ground-based simulator. So what's the number that a simulator like theirs can achieve? How much does motion contribute? What about the other factors? I met with Lindsay, the managing director, and the sim techs and instructors Charles, Chris, David, and Jay. They helped fill in some of the questions I had. They showed me this enormous $12 million ball of fun and how it was constructed. That it sits on these members that are not pistons. Instead, they're mounted on a rubber track like a tank tread, and huge electric motors swing them up and down to create the motion that simulates the flight. That how much motion you feel depends on how you fly. There are physical and cost considerations and even regulatory requirements that can constrain what they're able to do, but they intend to be as close as possible to the real thing. The glass cockpit, the displays, and the functions are all real, and they can be swapped out for specific model variants that a particular client may want to train for. So everyone being on the same page, we decided to go load up and see what we were able to do. We climbed in, strapped in, and the drawbridge was pulled up. I was super excited to have a chance to fly this beautiful machine, and also a little nervous that my skills were not up to the task and that I would end up crashing it and rolling away like an oversized beach ball. They told me it doesn't do that. So here I am taking off with my newly trained collective arm slowly pulling up. For those who have the 145 model on Microsoft Simulator, I took off with the trim released, so it's a little wonky, and I dragged the skid, which the simulator let me know quite clearly. But you know what? I maintained control, didn't crash it. The ball didn't go rolling into a corner. Did it feel real? Oh my gosh, yes sir. I did feel like I had a very large machine under my control. And I'm grateful that the extensive time I've spent on my own simulator gave me the confidence to calm and soothe the beast. If you rewind a couple times, you can watch the simulator from the outside and how it moved in relation to my takeoff. It moved a little bit. Not as much as you'd think, but it did move. And once we got underway at what you'd consider to be moderate speed, and I turn into a coordinated bank, you'll notice that the simulator moves just a tiny bit. In practice, as I was flying, I didn't really feel the turn. I decided to try it again at top speed. And as you can see, the simulator did move, but I still didn't really feel the turn. If you weren't able to catch the movement on the flight simulator, let's play it through at high speed. What I like about this clip is that you can see what I saw someone refer to as washout. My sim techs at Helisim were not familiar with that term, so it may not be a standard term. It could have been this one person's description. What you see is the simulator reacting to the g-forces of a turn, and then slowly return back to neutral, slowly enough to be imperceptible to your senses. And this is because when you're in a turn, you shouldn't feel like you're tilted and leaning over. You should feel planted in your seat, like you're sitting upright. I have seen many motion rig vendors get this wrong, and they and many in the simulator community will tell you that there are different schools of thought on the matter, and that for a gaming environment, this is correct and feels great. But the truth is, if you're gaming, it doesn't matter. It's just as good if somebody comes up behind you and shakes your seat. But if you want it to be real, it has to be correct. And this professional grade simulator is showing you how it's actually supposed to feel, because this is what it actually feels like in the air. I hovered near a mast, flew in Cat 2 conditions, and came back to the airport and practiced maneuvers landing on various inclines. The simulation seems to be more representative of the real world. It accounts for ground effect really well. They can use this simulator to train for real-world and specific scenarios like oil rig landings and even yacht landings. Now that's a cushy job, huh? As I come in for a yacht landing in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it looks great up until I get near the flight deck, and then we have a certain upset in the ground effect on elevated platforms. Microsoft really needs to get their act together on this. Though I didn't try out a yacht landing in Helisim's flight simulator, I can be confident they have their ground effect modeled correctly. Although, in fairness to Microsoft, their simulator is more of a generic fixed-wing platform, so a helicopter's ground effect may be more of a boutique effect for them. In general, I would characterize Helisim's simulator as just more smooth and more stable than Microsoft's model. Flying a helicopter in Microsoft feels just a little bit more twitchy than it felt at Helisim. I left the facility with a certain wistful feeling of having missed out on a career opportunity. Nevertheless, turning to focus on the 4 realism affecting factors that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the Collective is a control that is not typically part of a home flight simulator's equipment. But if you want to fly a helicopter and have it feel real, you're gonna need that. I was so much more comfortable flying this simulation than I was on my intro flight because of my familiarity with the Collective. If you want to build your own, there's a link in the description below, and I recommend it. On the assessment of motion, I think it's lovely and essential for certification, for things like auto-rotation, military maneuvers, and other scenarios. But for home-based realism, it could be that vibration may be more practical and a better value proposition. I certainly felt the rotor and the skid scraping and the landing bump, and I didn't really feel the turns and the pressure and G forces. It could be that for, quote, normal commercial operations in the flight simulator experience, vibration may be a more practical and sensible addition to your gear than full motion. The visuals were probably the biggest surprise. You have a full ear-to-ear 180-degree in-the-round display. It's not 3D, it's a flat display, but that didn't really seem to affect anything. Apparently, depth is a nice-to-have effect, but peripheral processing is better. As an example, take your hands and extend them out to the sides of your head and wiggle them around. And notice that your brain knows that there's something going on out there, even though it can't really see what is going on. Your brain can process that. By comparison, try riding a bicycle around with a scuba mask, which is what it would be like with a VR helmet, and you'll find that you'll feel a certain unease about the stability on the bicycle. So it appears that the peripheral processing of horizon and information out to the sides is something your brain uses to maintain stability in helicopter operations. And when you're flying a helicopter, you need all the help you can get. Perhaps in the future, VR will be a 360-degree helmet, and that would be a literal game changer. As for the fear of property damage, that was certainly unlocked with Helisim's $12 million mega ball of fun. I certainly didn't want to break anything. But for the fear of death, it could be that the only way to achieve that is to hire someone to menace you while you fly. I doubt the good people at Helisim will offer that option, but if you're already a licensed pilot and would love to be certified on one of these beautiful Airbus helicopters, I do recommend you contact them, link also in the description below. You will find them to be a friendly, informative, and effective team to get you on your way to a bigger and better helipad. I think that's about all I have to say for now. I look forward to your comments and questions, and until next time, may the feeling of that simulated rotor wash over you.